Tonight, WWE presents the NXT New Year's Evil special on the USA Network. Of course, they present it from the Capitol Wrestling Center inside the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. And there is a very, very big and stacked card to get into. Of course, two of the matches on this show as well have limited commercial interruption, or zero, quite frankly, commercial interruption. So it's obviously going head-to-head with AEW's New Year's Smash event as well. So we've got a bit of a rivalry back going on in the Wednesday Night Wars. I've mentioned quite a few times on the channel here already now that it felt for a period of time when it came to NXT that they'd kind of resigned themselves to losing every single week. And frankly, I still think that's going to be the case regardless of tonight's outcome or any future outcome. I think eventually NXT, I would hope, would move to Tuesdays, like they had good success with moving to Tuesdays last year, and AEW Dynamite would be on Wednesdays. But of course, we know NXT's purpose at this point, its sole purpose on Wednesday nights, is to take viewers away from AEW and prevent a huge amount of success for AEW. Nevertheless, when the whole Wednesday Night Wars first started, there was certainly an element of NXT trying to compete, bringing back Finn Balor to NXT, having big specials, counter-programming. I know they say they don't do it. They do it. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with competing or anything like that. So I didn't really have much of a problem with that. My problem is when it comes to the counter-programming is that they don't admit what they're doing, or they try to pretend that they don't know what they're doing when obviously they know exactly what they're doing. But of course, as I mentioned, you've got two TV specials going to head-to-head. If I had to make a prediction as to who will get the biggest total viewership, I think it might be quite close. AEW win the demo. They always do win the demo. But in terms of total viewership, who knows? We could see something quite interesting. But the big main event here, of course, is for the NXT Championship. It's Finn Balor facing Kyle O'Reilly in a rematch from NXT TakeOver 31. It's Finn Balor's first match back since being injured in that NXT Championship defense. It's his first match since September. So it's going to be very interesting. As I mentioned, this is also going to be a match that has no commercial interruption. So hopefully NXT and WWE are hoping that lots of people will tune in for this main event for the championship and stay tuned in. Right off the bat, who do I think is going to win? I think Finn Balor will retain the NXT Championship here. I don't envisage Kyle O'Reilly winning the NXT Championship, but I'm excited to see the rematch. I was a massive fan of the match that they had at NXT TakeOver 31. I thought it was the best match on the show. I do find it quite interesting that the way they did that match at NXT TakeOver 31 between Finn Balor and Kyle O'Reilly, very heavy on the striking, obviously. It was a very stiff match. Kind of a sort of New Japan style, strong style match in the sense that everything was very snug, very stiff, which led to Kyle O'Reilly being busted open a little bit. Of course, Finn Balor had a broken jaw during that match because of the kicks, because of the strikes, because of the forearms. And I find it kind of interesting that the first match that Finn Balor has back as NXT champion is going to be against Kyle O'Reilly. I don't know if they'll do the same kind of match. If they do the same kind of physical, hard-hitting match, which, to be honest, is the only match they can kind of really do themselves, I think. I don't know. It would be a risk to be. It certainly will test that jaw of Finn Balor, but I guess if you're cleared, you're cleared. That's kind of the situation there. If you're cleared to compete, you're cleared to compete, and if Finn Balor's ready, then I guess that will be the case and defend the NXT Championship. As I mentioned, I don't think Finn Balor will lose the NXT Championship. I think he'll win. It's nice to see Kyle O'Reilly, though, be featured in the main event. I think he's a fantastic worker with a ton of potential, and he's got great charisma too. It was quite surprising, ultimately, that Carrion Cross wasn't in this position, and he never was. He's going to be facing Damian Priest. We'll touch on that in a second. Considering that, of course, Finn Balor only became the NXT champion because Carrion Cross had to vacate it after he got injured his shoulder at NXT TakeOver 30 in August. And then, ironically, Finn Balor wins the championship, but then himself gets injured. And because he gets injured, he's on the shelf for a while. I'm interested that WWE didn't decide to strip Finn Balor of the NXT Championship. I think, frankly, the reason they decided not to, the only reason they decided not to, is because they just done that with Carrion Cross. I think in reality, initially NXT thought that Balor was going to be out of the ring for maybe a month. In reality, he was out for 3. And for most other people, they would probably have been stripped for the NXT Championship. I think the only reason they didn't, frankly, was because Carrion Cross, it just happened to him. So that's why they didn't do it in the end when it comes to stripping Finn Balor of that NXT Championship. So, not to say he got away with one there, but frankly, he kind of did because of the circumstances. And it was coming to the end of the year. It was September time, wasn't it? So you had October, November, December. I think October, the Halloween Havoc show really did miss not having an NXT Championship match. That was a shame. But Finn Balor, I would hope now he's back healthy and ready, and he's going to put together that NXT Championship run that he hoped he would. Because, frankly, to be completely brutal, Finn Balor's NXT run since he returned back in 2019, has it been amazing? Not really. I don't think it's probably hit the expectations that he or NXT and WWE felt that it would. Balor being brought back was in direct competition to AEW Dynamite. They knew that. Obviously, Dynamite has the likes of Jon Moxley, Chris Jericho, Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, etc. Big stars on the roster. They needed stars on NXT, so they brought back Finn Balor. I think there were plans to bring back the likes of Kevin Owens and maybe some other names. Didn't happen in the end. Finn Balor was brought back, and it was to hopefully get some eyeballs on the NXT brand, and I don't think he had lived up to expectations or thoughts that he would. It felt like a big deal, and then for a while, Finn Balor just felt like another guy in NXT, unfortunately. But regardless, now he's the NXT champion. Once he became the NXT champion back in August, September last year, I think then there was a feeling of, okay, this is where Finn Balor's NXT run is starting to pick up. This is where we're going to see big things from him once again. And of course, then he got injured. So it does feel like it's been one thing after another when it comes to Finn Balor and this run in NXT. Nevertheless, tonight's match I think will be very good. I think it will go long. NXT is all about the in-ring product anyway, isn't it? So I have no doubt it'll be an excellent match. Will it be as good as the NXT TakeOver 31 match? The fact that it does have no commercial interruptions I think is very, very positive for me, because ultimately, when it comes to matches on TV matches for championships is a thing that lets it down from being exceptional matches are going to commercial, and every time you come back, you have to essentially reset and build up the momentum that you just lost, especially in an environment where there aren't many fans. Obviously, the Capitol Wrestling Center does have fans in attendance, but it's different, isn't it? It's different. That was arguably one of the best matches on WWE TV last year was AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan for the Intercontinental Championship. The only thing that let it down during that, I think it was like 35, maybe 40-minute match, was the fact it had a million commercial interruptions. The fact we're not going to have that for this match at NXT New Year's Eve was very, very positive. As far as a prediction, as I mentioned from the top, I think Finn Balor will win. I think he will retain the NXT Championship, but I have no doubt in my mind it's going to be an excellent match, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing it. Now let's talk briefly about some other matches that we're going to see tonight on NXT New Year's Eve. We've got Damian Priest facing Carrion Cross. Now this is going to be very interesting. I'm a huge fan of both. I think Damian Priest, what was really surprising about him is that he won the NXT North American Championship at NXT TakeOver 30, and he lost it very, very quickly. He lost it at Halloween Havoc, of course. Now, I suppose in the grand scheme of things, August to October, he had a reign with it, not a super long reign, but he had a reign. I felt at the time that with him losing the North American Championship, that meant that he was destined for the main roster very soon. Punishment Martinez, Damian Priest, is a guy that I think is 37, 38, so he's not exactly a spring chicken in the terms of guys that are usually in NXT. In the I don't want to call it developmental, but it still is, frankly. I mean, I know that might upset people, but it is. Look at the way that WWE and Vince McMahon treats it. So I think that he's destined for the main roster very soon, which is why I think he'll have this match against Carrion Cross, and frankly, I think Carrion Cross will absolutely destroy him. As I mentioned, when it comes to Carrion Cross, it was quite surprising in a sense that he didn't go straight for the NXT Championship. I think that would have been the smart thing, but I guess they're trying to get out this Finn Balor versus Kyle O'Reilly match. Eventually, we're going to get Finn Balor versus Carrion Cross, because that's the story, isn't it? Carrion Cross is going to come back for the championship that he never lost. The push that Carrion Cross got coming into NXT, this guy had, was it something like 10, 11, 12 matches in NXT, then became the NXT champion, and his push was very, very good. It was entertaining. It felt like a big deal when he beat Keith Lee, the first ever NXT and North American champion at the same time. When he beat him back at NXT TakeOver 30, it felt like a big deal. It felt like a very big deal. So I think Carrion Cross will win. I think he'll win decisively against Damian Priest. I would think maybe that means Damian Priest then goes to the main roster, and eventually we're going to have Carrion Cross facing Finn Balor. I think at this point it's just inevitable, isn't it? It's going to happen, because if Carrion Cross, after beating Damian Priest, doesn't go for the NXT Championship, then what is he doing? There's no logic there. I know they tried to do a bit of logic about Damian Priest disrespected Scarlett, and that's the reason Carrion Cross has decided to go after Damian Priest first. I credit them for trying to put a bit of logic in there, but I still struggle to realize or think, why wouldn't he just go straight for the NXT Championship? I understand that that's the story they're telling. Oh, there was disrespect. That's the situation there. So that's what they're going for. But eventually, Carrion Cross will win tonight, I think, and then eventually he'll go for that NXT Championship. It's inevitable. It's just inevitable. So I would think maybe the next NXT takeover, whenever that is, that will be when we see Finn Balor versus Carrion Cross. But that's definitely coming in 2021. And personally, I think Carrion Cross, once we get to that NXT takeover match between Finn Balor and Carrion Cross, I think Carrion Cross will win that. I think he's going to get the championship back. I think Triple H and those in NXT obviously have plans for him. They're obviously a big fan of Carrion Cross, and they want him to be NXT champion. The only thing that might go against that is when Carrion Cross signed with WWE in the first place, it was reported that his run in NXT would be very limited. So that's why some people speculated he got the NXT championship so quickly, is because they only had him for a year or so. Obviously, he had the shoulder injury, which kept him out for, 3-4 months? I would maybe think then that it's a case of he'll be staying 3 or 4 more months longer than he would have originally. So we'll have to wait and see, but I'm excited to see that. I don't think it'll be a long match, but I think it'll be very interesting. Arguably the match I might be looking forward to the most, in addition to obviously the NXT Championship match between Finn Balor and Kyle O'Reilly, is the last woman standing match between Rhea Ripley and Raquel Gonzalez. Now, these two I'm a big fan of. Obviously, we know about Rhea Ripley. We know about her strengths, how great she is. Obviously, she wrestled at WrestleMania last year. I did a video the other day talking about potential winners of the Royal Rumble match, and I said during that video that, frankly, it was surprising that Rhea Ripley was still with NXT at this point, because you have to look at what she was doing last year. She was in a WrestleMania match defending the NXT Women's Championship. She was appearing on Raw regularly because of her feud with Charlotte Flair. And I think a lot of people thought, one, she would win at WrestleMania last year, which she didn't, but regardless of the outcome, she would go to the main roster, because essentially facing Charlotte at WrestleMania, defending the NXT Women's Championship at WrestleMania, appearing on Monday Night Raw, that was essentially the beginning of her transition over to the main roster, and it didn't happen. Now, obviously, there's a variety of reasons why the transition over to the main roster didn't happen. Obviously, the pandemic, then there were rumours about travel issues and visa issues. Obviously, she's from Australia, and then once she did return to NXT, she just stayed, and I think that is surprising. But I would assume that this is probably in the same way that Damian Priest's, this might be his last appearance with NXT. I think with Rhea Ripley, I think it's even more likely this will be her last appearance with NXT. She defeated Raquel Gonzalez, was that back at Halloween Havoc, I think, and they have good chemistry. I'm a big fan of Raquel Gonzalez. I think she's got a ton of potential. I think she does the job of a powerhouse female pro wrestler very well. I think she's got a ton of upside, and I'm a big fan. And I think also her improvement that we've seen over the course of 2020 was pretty meteoric. It was a lot quicker than I think a lot of people thought. People initially thought, is this going to be a case of just a big athlete? Are they good in the ring? But she is good in the ring. Still green. Still very green, but I think there's a ton of potential there and a ton of promise. And I think this match tonight, I think this will go very long, but also in addition to that, I think Raquel Gonzalez is going to win, and I think this is going to be Rhea Ripley's send-off. Now, there has been rumours that Rhea Ripley could win the Royal Rumble match, the female Royal Rumble match. Certainly a possibility, absolutely a possibility. Of course, I think the betting odds favourite at the moment is Bianca Belair, but I wouldn't rule out Rhea Ripley winning the Royal Rumble this year, and maybe they do a kind of reverse of what happened last year. When it comes to Charlotte Flair, of course, won the Royal Rumble last year, and she challenged Rhea Ripley. What if Rhea Ripley wins it this year and challenges Charlotte Flair if Charlotte Flair becomes the Raw Women's Champion? It's a possibility. We know the discussions when it comes to WrestleMania 37 have been essentially about rehashing last year's card but changing something slightly. So that might be the case. Maybe we'll get Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania. Either way, I expect Raquel Gonzalez to win this match, because that's what you do when you're leaving NXT. You do the favors on the way out. And I expect Raquel Gonzalez to win this one, and I also expect Rhea Ripley to head to the main roster soon. Maybe she'll make her full main roster official, because she's been on the main roster before, but her official main roster return debut, whatever you want to call it, by entering the Royal Rumble match on January 31. I think that's probably the most likely scenario there. We also have a Cruiserweight Championship match scheduled for tonight's show, as Cruiserweight Champion Santos Escobar defends against Raw Superstar Gran Metalik. This one's a sleeper. I was really glad to see Gran Metalik on NXT last week. I think the Cruiserweight division, not that it's been forgotten about, because I don't think it has, but Santos Escobar, I'm a big fan of. I think he's got a great look. I'm a fan of the way he works. The Legado del Fantasma Stable, I think, is well done. I think the issue is when it comes to the cruiserweight division is that it's just largely been forgotten about. They tried to do it on the main roster, well, Vince McMahon did, and ultimately, I guess it failed. The integration failed. Or Vince McMahon essentially got bored with it. I think maybe that's more of a fair analysis there. And 205 Live, I mean, it continues to be good most weeks. It's not regular viewing for myself, I must say, but the Cruiserweight division is better suited to NXT. The problem is with the Cruiserweight division in NXT is the sense that it doesn't feel like he has a ton of superstars to face off against. I enjoyed his matches against Isaiah Swerve Scott. I felt maybe they had too many of them, but it doesn't feel like there is a ton of superstars to compete with. I like the fact that cruiserweights from other brands, why not come across? It gives credibility to NXT. It gives credibility to the Cruiserweight division. It makes a lot of sense. And like I said, I think it's going to be a sleeper match for the show. I don't think Grand Metalik will win because ultimately he's still a Raw superstar, but who knows? Anything is possible, and I think it'll be a better match than he would have on Monday Night Raw. So I'm very excited to see that one. And finally, also, we have Xia Li and Boa returning tonight after their weeks and weeks of gimmicks, of this gimmick change in this vignette that we're seeing. It was odd. These vignettes were very odd initially, and I think myself and a lot of people were not completely sold on what they actually were and what they actually would mean in NXT going forward. But as they've got more dark, as they've got more gritty and sort of disturbing in some cases, they've been interesting, and it has built some hype. It feels like the longest time because these started in October or something like that, so we've had to wait 3-4 months to finally get a payoff. But I'm interested, and maybe this is going to be something very interesting. We're going to finally be revealed who is their leader. There have been lots of rumours as to who their leader could be, but I think there is certainly a big amount of curiosity and a lot amount of interest as to what this mysterious leader, what this full gimmick change will look like. I've enjoyed the vignettes. I will say, like I said, I wasn't completely sold on them at the start. I wasn't completely sold on realistically what they meant. And if this was just going to be another attempt of WWE to do, that they've always tried to do the sort of Asian gimmick, whether it's, but sometimes with worse things like Tensai and all that sort of stuff. But this is, I think, the best version of when they've tried to do this in the past. I enjoy this. So I think the vignettes have been really well done, really, really well done. And I'm excited to see. I'm really excited to see who the leader is and how they do the entrance, how they do the whole portrayal, how the new gimmick change looks, how the character looks. So I'm very excited to see Xia Li and Boa return tonight on NXT. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts and predictions for tonight's NXT New Year's Evil special on the USA Network? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about NXT, AEW, WWE, Impact Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. It really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.